everyone, and here's a devotional for Saturday, October 19th, 2019, entitled God's Narrow and Wide-Angle Lenses. Though he brings grief, he will show compassion, so great is his unfailing love, for he does not willingly bring affliction or grief to the children of men. Lamentations 3:32 and 33. When my paralyzing accident happened, I know the Lord took no pleasure in it. I believe it pained his heart to see me hurt, just as any father has compassion on his child. Yet I also know it pleased the Lord to permit my accident. He was as delighted then as he is now to work it all out for my good and his glory. Sound confusing? I can understand why. In some scriptures, God is described as grieving over affliction. In others, it doesn't seem to bother him. Dr. John Piper explains it this way. God has the capacity to look at the world through two lenses, a narrow lens and a wide-angle lens. When the Lord looks at a painful event through the narrow lens, he sees the tragedy for what it is in itself, and he is deeply grieved. As Ezekiel 18:32 says, I take no pleasure in the death of anyone, declares the sovereign Lord. He hates the isolated incident of disease, crime, or violence. But when God looks at a painful event through his wide-angle lens, he sees the tragedy in relation to everything leading up to it, as well as everything that flows from it. He has in mind Romans 8:28, in all things God works for the good of those who love him, and Ephesians 1:11, according to the plan of him who works out everything in conformity with the purpose of his will. The connections form a mosaic stretching into eternity. This mosaic, in all its parts of good and evil, dark and light, brings him delight. God often wills what he desires. God often wills what he despises because he has two lenses. You can trust him today with your painful trial, that it is part of a pattern. One day you too will put on that wide-angle lens. When you do, what a beautiful mosaic you will see. My short-sightedness, Lord, keeps me from seeing how pain can result in good. Help me to look through the lens of faith. That's hard sometimes, isn't it? When things go wrong, I'm like, but God, why are you doing this? Why are you allowing this? But sometimes, like I have said before, what if God says no? Sometimes he does. And actually, by the way, God did finish that song. I think I'm going to sing that chorus today because sometimes he does say no. But first I want to say this. We often, when God is, allowing certain things to happen in our lives, and when things happen in our lives, we don't see the big picture. We don't see that God means whatever is going on for the best for us. Like she said, for our good and for his glory. And I love that phrase. I've used it over and over again myself, and I love that. And I know that I've said this to some of you as well, so you guys are probably sick of hearing this by now. But one time I was in the studio doing this song. The song was called Let Jesus Hold You. And that was back when I went to the studio. And my producer was very awesome, very patient, very good. And I sang the lead part, and I did one of the background vocals. And it sounded awful, to be honest. And then I thought, oh my goodness, he probably just thinks this is just horrendous or whatever. But I knew that with the other two parts, or three, whatever it was, that it was going to sound good, that it was going to be the whole picture. And I think George knew that too. That's why, he didn't say anything, because he just waited to see, what was going to happen. Because he could have been like, this sounds horrible. What in the world? But, he didn't do that. He waited because he knew that the whole picture would come together once all of the parts were in place. How about in our lives? Are we seeing that whole picture, or are we just thinking, oh no, I see what's right in front of me and it's terrible. What are we going to do? But let's ask God to help us, and if he wants to reveal that whole picture to us, he can, but most of the time he doesn't. But let's trust God and know that he knows what's best in our lives. And I am going to sing this because God gave me the rest of it, and I was really excited. What if God says no to what you think you need? Will you still trust Him? Will you still believe that He is still faithful and that He is still so good, even though His perfect plan you misunderstood? Will you stay or will you go? What if God says no? And may the Lord bless you all and be with you till tomorrow.